What's up? Today I'll be showing you some beginner and intermediate chess traps that you can use to crush your opponents with. So without further ado, let's just jump straight into it. So right here we have this is a trap for white. White to win against black. Play the queen's pawn opening. They respond with d5. This is a gambit line, so this would be e4. They accept this gambit. Then you play knight c3. To kind of attack this pawn, regain the pawn. Your opponent would typically play knight over here. This will defend the pawn, but then you gambit another pawn. Just like that, your opponent is up by 2 pawns. So right here, you take back with the queen. Now you have another pawn that is pretty much gambited. They typically will take this with the queen. Now, the queen's at the center of the board. You would want to attack it with your bishop. Now, obviously, the opponent's queen is attacked. There are many spaces the queen can move to, but the most played move after this is b4. Another move they could play is, they really wouldn't bring it back because that's just a waste of a move. And then, even if they do, look, you're up by development by so much, attacking the middle of the board. There's another move they can make, which is right here to check your king, but you should be fine after your pawn. And then you know the queen. They have to move. Usually they will move to this square though, attacking this loose pawn. And once they attack the pawn, your rook and knight would be under attack as well. So once they move there, just castle queenside. Now look, you have a whole rook file, and you got so many pieces developed and ready to attack. Your opponent's pieces are all in the back, not much development. And so once you castle, a common move that your opponent would make would be bishop g4. They think this is a good move because you know what it does? It pins the queen and the rook. You know, you're gonna have to move your queen somewhere, they think, and you just take the rook, and then they'll be winning more. And also, the bishop's defended by the queen. But guess what? You would just ignore it. Play knight to b5. Why? Because let me show you why. They think they're ecstatic. They just won a queen. You know, they're extremely happy. They're probably jumping off the walls. They won a queen, and they were up 2 pawns from before that you gambited. But guess what? You have a killer move, which is knight to c7, and that is actually checkmate. The king has nowhere to go. It's attacked by the knight, and he can't move to this file because it's protected by the rook. This is a great opening trap from the queen's pawn opening for white. So next we have an opening trap for black, and this one's very, very effective. So it starts with e4, you play e5, they attack that pawn with the knight, you defend, and if they move their bishop here to c4, you've entered the Italian game. What you want to do next is play knight to d4. Guess what? That loosens this pawn because that knight was defending it. Most commonly played move, they're gonna take it. It's logical. It's a free pawn. Why wouldn't you take it? And that also gives them 2 attackers on this weak f7 square, the knight and the bishop. And they're looking to play knight to f7 because that'll fork the rook and the queen next. So what you want to do is completely ignore this. Let them have this square. Let them take the pawn. You're gonna play d5. It's gonna attack the knight, but you know this is what your opponent wanted. They're gonna take this pawn because it's free. Forks the rook and the queen as well. So they're gonna win something. They're gonna win a rook or a queen. But what you want to do next is actually ignore the threat. Let them win the rook. You know, it doesn't matter. You're gonna have to save the queen though. Just play the queen g2. That also attacks their opponent's rook. So there are 2 scenarios your opponent can play. Scenario A is if they save their rook, like that, so it's defended by the king and the bishop. Scenario 2 is if the knight takes the rook. We're gonna look at if they save the rook first. And right now, you are completely winning. You're either gonna checkmate them or win a queen. And let me show you how. You move your queen to e4, take that free pawn in the center, and give a check to the king. They can only play 2 moves. first move is to block with the queen. That's actually the best move, but what you're gonna do next is take with the knight, and you're up a whole queen in just like, I don't know, 6 moves. I don't know, but yeah, that's a huge advantage for you. The next move, the only other move they can make, is to block with the bishop from check. Guess what? This is a beautiful checkmate with the knight. It's a smothered mate. The bishop can't take the knight because the queen's pinning it to the king. And so yeah, this is a beautiful smothered checkmate. Alright, so let's look at scenario 2. Take with the pawn. If the knight takes with the rook, you're also completely winning. Let me show you how. You take their rook, you throw in a check. The only move they can make is to block with the bishop. The king can't move up because the knight's there. So yeah, the bishop's got to come back and block the check. Do the same thing. You take the free pawn in the center. They have to block with the bishop because, you know, they block with the queen. You saw it before. You just take with the knight. Take center pawn. They block with the bishop. Now this bishop move is very important. You bring your bishop out into the game, and you'll see why in a couple of moves. The most commonly played move now by your opponent is to move their knight, attacking this queen because the queen is very dangerous right there. Then you just give a knight check. Obviously they can't take because the queen's pinned. So, alright, so the king's only move is to move to f1. Then you move your queen there. You are threatening to checkmate on f2 with the queen and the bishop, like that. So if your opponent doesn't want to get checkmated, he's gonna move the king there. That's his best move. And yeah, now you're really winning. You gotta take best move is to take with the queen. There are only 2 squares the king can move. There and there. Both lead to checkmate in 1. If the king moves there, look at this beautiful checkmate. You just move your pawn to d6. That will reveal this light square bishop. King has no more safe squares. No more safe squares. These 2 are protected by the queen. King can't go there because of the knight. And this bishop. Beautiful. The other move, king right in the corner. It's not really where you want to place the king with all these active pieces because eventually you're going to get checkmated. Just like this with the knight and the queen. Here we have another opening trap for white. It's called the fried liver. It starts with e4, e5, move your knight right there, opponent moves their knight there, then move your bishop to c4. So if your opponent plays f6, you can play the fried liver. It's very aggressive opening. Move your knight to g5, and what it does is double attacks that weak f7 square. So say for example your opponent plays like a useless move like that. This is what you want to do. You move your knight there, and what that does is it forks the queen and the rook, and you're going to be up material in just 5 moves, just like that. But say for example your opponent does see what your plans are. A logical move they can make is to block the bishop's sight. Now you can't move your knight there because then your opponent can just take with the king. It's blocking the bishop's scope. So what you want to do now is just remove that. Take the pawn. Opponent will likely take the back with the knight. That also reveals attack by the queen to your knight. But here you can play a great sack. Just sack the knight. Your opponent would take the knight back, move your queen to f3, throw in a check, and forking the knight as well. You're gonna win a knight back because you got 2 things attacking that knight, and the only defender is the queen. Your opponent's best move would be to defend the knight, but you can play b3, attacking that knight. So it's pretty solid too because you got a lot of development, you got a lot of pieces out on the board, and your opponent's king is right there, like right in the center of the board. You can attack it with all these developed pieces you have. You have a very good advantage right here. But if your opponent moves the king back to that square, g8 square, that is checkmate in just 10 moves, because let me show you how. Your bishop, just take with the knight, they block with the bishop, take the bishop. That's the only other move, to block the bishop. Now you got a good checkmate. The king can't go anywhere else, and yeah, it's just checkmate in like 10 moves. Next, we have an opening trap for black, and it's called the fishing pole trap. Starts with e4, e5, knight to f3. You play knight to c6, and they move their bishop down to e5. This is a Roy Lopez opening. What they want to do is attack the knight, so remove the defender from this pawn. They can win their pawn. But just play f6. Say if your opponent castles, you can try the fishing pole trap. Just bait it with this knight move right there. It's a little weird, but this is the bait for the fishing pole trap. If their opponent doesn't like the knight there, attacking it with the pawn, what you want to do now is actually, that's the bait. Let them take the knight. Ignore it and just play h5. They're gonna take the knight. It's a free knight. Why not? You know. Just stick with the pawn. Now you're threatening to take their knight. Their knight has to move somewhere. They can't move here because the pawn's taking it. Logical move would be to move back there. Now you play queen to d4. What that pawn take does is it opens the file for the rook. So once you place the queen there, you're actually threatening checkmate on the next move, moving it either there or there with the rook and queen checkmate. Your opponent can stall this out by playing f3, giving an escape square for the king. But it's not really an escape square, because you could just play g3, suffocating the king as it can't move because the pawn's attacking that square. So now, whatever they do, whatever move they play, like say for example, they just you're just gonna take your knight. You can move your queen there to h2 or h1 via checkmate. Just like that, you checkmated your opponent in 9 moves. Here we have a solid beginner opening trap. It's called the Wayward Queen Attack. Play e4, opponent plays e5. You bring your queen right there, attacking this loose pawn. If your opponent plays g6, attacking the queen, you take the pawn, forks the king and the rook, you block with the queen, whatever. You take rook, you up a rook in the first 4 moves. Pretty solid. But say for example they defend with the knight, you can move your bishop to c4, and here's where a lot of beginners make a mistake. They move their knight there thinking it's a good move to attack the queen or the pawn, but you can just move the king there, checkmate in just 4 moves. Now I'm going to show you a little more advanced trap, that similar to the trap that I showed you before, but it's a little more advanced with the queen. And it starts with e4, e5. You move your knight there. They defend with that move, and that move just loses right on the spot, because what you want to do is just sacrifice your knight, take the pawn. They're going to take the knight back. It's fine. You're down a knight, but you have a huge advantage right now by playing h5 check. Similar to before, if they block with the pawn, just win the rook in 4 moves. But their only other move is to move their king there to flee from check. Just take the pawn in the middle. The only safe square your opponent has is that square right there. What you want to do now is just move your bishop to c4. The king is forced to go this way. Throw in a check with the queen. Now your opponent's king is kind of stuck in this corner, and you can play this very nice move, pawn to d3, which will reveal an attack to the king. And so the only logical move, they can only play 2 moves. The first move is queen to g5, but that's just checkmate in 1. That's just checkmate. The only other move they can play is pawn there. So now you want to play h4. And what that does is it will reveal checkmate if your opponent does nothing in just a couple of moves. Say for example, if they developed a knight because they think they're safe, just take with the pawn. That reveals a check to the king. King's only safe square is that square. Then you just move your queen back. That's checkmate with the queen. So they obviously have to do something about this pawn. Otherwise it's checkmate. Or if the king sees that that's about to happen, they can try running away by moving backwards, but it's just checkmate. With the queen there, they have to move back, then just take the pawn, and that is checkmate. Regardless, like even if you don't find this very long checkmate, you're winning completely right here. Like the king is out in the open. You got so many things attacking. You've got like pieces in the center. You know, moving this pawn will reveal the bishop. You can just develop your knight. Your opponent is screwed basically. You have high advantage with this opening. So definitely try this out if you see your opponent play this pawn move. Just sack the knight. Boom, boom. Bring your queen out. You have lots of attacking power. You're gonna have a huge advantage over your opponent in this game.